All right. The demo during the session was not great, so I'm determined to walk everyone through a real life start from scratch building an agent. So I'm gonna just resume the chat and the prompt and say, try again, because I disconnected it from my other workspace. So I'm hoping that will fix the problem.
A few moments later.
Let's see. Okay, so it wants to connect to Gmail, so I'm gonna say connect. I'm gonna say yes. It's already installed, so if you don't have this step, it'll have you install that in your workspace. I'm going to confirm. Okay, I still need to disconnect something. So 1 moment, please.
A few moments later.
So what I did was I disconnected the connections from the other workspace just to show you guys what I'm doing here. So let's try that again. Maybe that's what it needs. So let's see. Try again.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
Okay, let's try a brand new chat. All right, so you can see it already starts to set up the scaffold of the instructions, the same sections that I walked you all through earlier, which is what is the trigger event, and then it's going to populate these instructions as it builds. This is where eventually the tools and access will do the connections, and so you can see it's already starting to populate the instructions. So let's see, now it's done. Your agent is set up with a daily briefing instruction, connections were added, next steps that are needed. So now we need to do the connections. And it will prompt you on different interim cadences to save changes. I think it's usually fine if you don't save right away every time, Control S, but I just tend to do it anyway, just in case. You can either click save here or click save here. So it's saying, let's connect. So I'm going to go ahead and click connect calendar account. So I'm going to click Google. And for those of you who asked, sorry, just to go back really quick, connect with iCloud, connect with Outlook. All right, so we're going to connect with Google. This is the specific one that I want it to connect to, and continue. I'm just going to give it the default access. Great, calendar connected. Your agent can now read and create calendar events. Mail, connect to mail. Continue with Google. Choose an account. That's the one I want. Continue, continue, and it's going to think about it. You're done. There we go. So that took only a couple of minutes. So now I'm going to say, do you have what you need for connections? So here it's saying what's still potentially missing. So this one, I'm trying to think if I should make a Notion board right now, a Notion task. All right, let's leave this for now, and let's say, let's hold off on databases for now, run the agent to see what it would look like for today's morning brief. And this is me already knowing other things that need to be set up. If we really wanted this to be, again, a morning brief, we would need to tell it when to run. So in the one that I already have set up for myself, it's set up for daily at 7 a.m. Because I haven't indicated that cadence here, it would only run manually. So I need to tell it when to run. So part of this is just getting accustomed to the things to think about. But again, that's why I have that guide of what are the inputs, what's the cadence, things like that. Okay, so this is its brief for today. So it's interesting because it's saying that there's an off error, even though it said it was connected. Great, so these are open loops. It looked at my Gmail and says, hey, you actually have an unreplied email that's for a client. And then these are events that I have on my calendar. And then I think it's, oh, this is also part of mail. It's saying, hey, you have all these newsletters. And so it says here, important context and constraints. That's another way to think about this, is like, what constraints do you want to put on it? It says deadlines travel are intentionally not included yet. And I can't see calendar constraints. Make it actionable. Set a 15-minute now. Okay, what are the top 3 priorities? So this is where it differs from the example I showed you live, because I haven't done that refinement yet. Okay, so there's a couple things that I want to tweak. So create a template so that the brief looks the same every day. Have a top 3 priorities section, have a section for emails and a section for meetings for the day. Once you have that set up, let's tackle the calendar issue. And then before I forget, I'm just going to tee up this addition to the prompt, which is I want this to run every day at 7 a.m. local time. I also want you to ping me this on Slack in #morning-briefs. Don't put all of the text, just give me a TLDR summary and a link to the morning brief, which should be created as a Notion page every day. All right, so it's saying, here's the template to reinforce a daily schedule. Here's what's missing. Okay, so this is something that is a little wonky in Notion, so I do want to go over this, which is the permissions. So the agent, it's being treated as a person or as a worker. And so, as I said on the call, I need to give the agent access to my databases. And I can do this at the page or database level, meaning I can have, as I do in my fully built out Notion workspace, a CRM database, a meetings database, all these different things. And I can say, you specific agent, Bob, you can only have access to CRM. You, agent Jane, you can only have access to meetings. So what's happening is it's saying Notion, the agent can only view these things, but it cannot write. And I'm telling it, I need you to write a page every day to keep these briefs. So to finish this, tell me where you want the pages to live. Create a briefs database, and for each day and each brief, create a new page. And then on the Slack question, it's saying it can't do it from this interface, and it's asking me to do it here, which we can do. The calendar issue, okay, we'll come back to that. So I'm gonna hit that, and then while it's doing that, I'm gonna say add connection, Slack, connect Slack to workspace, continue. All right, so here it's saying, what do you want the agent to be able to do? Do you just want it to be able to read, or do you want it to be able to post messages? For me specifically, I want it to post messages because I want it to give me the TLDR in Slack and then give me a link in Slack to the briefs. And again, I know privacy is a concern for folks, totally valid. I'm going to give it access to my personal Slack workspace, which in my opinion doesn't have any sensitive data that I'm really worried about. It already has access to my calendar and Gmail. So at this point, the things it already has access to, frankly, should be more concerned. So if I'm not concerned with those, I'm not concerned with Slack because it's just my workspace. And yes, let's just click allow. So I have several Slacks. Okay, so same thing. I'm reaching friction point because it's connected to the other workspace, which I thought I fixed, but I didn't. So let's just pause, and then I'm gonna jump back. All right, I'm back. My AirPods died, so switching over. So it's telling me, where should the briefs live? Sure, I'm just gonna say, it's gonna give me options. All right, so it's telling me basically that I need to, so you know what I'm gonna do here? I'm just gonna copy, and as I mentioned on the call, this kind of general Notion AI can be used, so it's asking me to save, can be used for just creating in Notion in general. So I'm just gonna say, I'm trying to build a Notion agent to brief me every morning. It's running into some trouble setting up a database. Can you help wire this up? And then I'm just gonna paste what the agent told me in terms of where it's having trouble. So it's saying, I just need the destination. Where should I create it? I see. So what's happening, and this should not be the case for most of you, because if you are starting fresh from Notion, you will only have one workspace or team space. Because I created this testing account for the purposes of demo, it's asking me to clarify where it wants it. So I'm gonna say testing. So this is the testing team space. So I'm gonna let that run for a little bit. All right. So I didn't get into this in the session, but part of why I have not used Notion really as much as I wanted to in the past was because I had a little bit of trouble really understanding how the databases were structured and how things connect. And it felt very particular how things needed to be created, a page versus a database, which, to be frank, I'm still a little bit confused on. So what's great is that I can just chat with Notion AI to say, here's what I want. However that makes sense in your world of Notion, make it so. And so with that, it has created a hub and a database. So let's see, morning briefs and briefs. Why are there two? Okay, so I think it needs a page, and on that page, it needs this table. Okay, so let's go back to our morning brief agent. And this is where all the chats are. And so this is the one where we were working with the agent. So I'm gonna say morning briefs page and briefs database exists. What else do you need? I'm gonna say now exists, maybe. That's fine. It'll figure it out. All right, it says I have what I need on the Notion side. I found the page, I found the database. Here's what I still need. I need that Slack connection and the calendar issue. Okay, let's forget Slack. Let's work on calendar. Just for the purpose of getting this up and live, the main thing I wanted to show you all was how to do those connections. And as you can see, they're fairly simple. It should only take you a couple of minutes to connect. So it would be the same thing with Slack. It's just a couple of clicks and then it's connected. And in this case, I would select the specific channel, but I think you have the basics now. Calendar is working now. Beautiful. I don't know what happened, but it's there now. If you want now, I'll update instructions to explicitly include a conflicts check. Sure. See, so it's already making recommendations about how to improve itself. And here is that daily 7 a.m. trigger that I asked it for in a prior block. Okay, run the morning brief again now that everything is hooked up. Okay, I reran the brief. It's a new page here. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. Top 3 priorities, meetings, emails, some conflicts, missing. So the open loops is not connected because I don't have a task database yet. But again, that's something I can just wire up with Notion's AI. I can actually do that in a second just to complete the loop here. Email list is based on unread only. If I only do one thing, decide and communicate the morning overlap. Right, because I had a couple of holds. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go back here, and I'm actually gonna go back to the chat where I did this wiring up because it'll just be a similar context. So I'm gonna say, great, can you also help me wire up a database to manage my to-do? Say more. I don't know what it's asking. Great, now it's more specific. Where do you want it to live? Do you want it to live inside of morning briefs? Structure, do you want a simple personal task list? Do you want it to be relational? So do you want to have projects and clients and have those tasks relate to those things? And then views is a big part of Notion, having a database and then being able to look at that database in different views with different filters, essentially. I can show you actually what that looks like in my current setup in a second, but let's just, again, complete this loop. It should have its own database, like morning briefs, and let's just make it a simple personal task list. Every task is a row with a checkbox, and I want to track the fields task created, task due, notes, status. So let's just start with that and see what it does. Again, I usually try not to get focused on trying to get it perfect and remember every single thing I want with the agents or with when I'm creating databases in Notion, because usually once the scaffold is up, I immediately have a better sense of what else I need to add or what I want to change. And I'd say that's my general ethos, is just get started. It is a lot easier to edit than to get over that initial hump of the cold start or the inertia of, I should really do this. So sometimes we need to just do. Great. I created a dedicated to-dos. It has 1 row per task. So let's go ahead and check that out. And what you should start to see is this sidebar starts to populate. So I'm just gonna hide a couple things so it's less noisy. I'm gonna hide all this, but you'll see this is the team space. This is the workspace that we're in, the sandbox. And you can see that these are the databases, the morning briefs that we just created, and now this to do. So let's say, let's go back to our chat. Great, let's populate a couple of tasks. I want to send this recording to Millie and Edja, and I want to edit this. By it, I meant the video, but let's just see what happens. See, it's already reading my mind. Edit the recording. It's saying that second task, what did you mean? Any due dates today. Today for both. And so this is what I'll do sometimes. I do have automations that link from my granola notes, captures action items, and immediately creates them as items in my Notion task database. But that doesn't capture everything all the time. So sometimes I will just come into Notion, usually if I have a lot of things to do, or honestly, sometimes just because finding the database, clicking into the fields is somehow too much for me. So I like to just voice dictate a lot using Whisperflow. So let's see, I added both tasks. So let's go ahead and see that. I'm gonna go here to my database here, edit the recording, send the recording. It has my checkbox. It has a status. It has a due date. It is keeping track of when I created. The reason I have this is because this will help with the open loops. And then this is just, I always like having a blanket notes field for things that I'm not thinking of at the moment. And then I'll usually try to observe if there are trends of, oh, I seem to also be tracking this. And then that to me is a trigger of a friction point that, oh, this needs to be a whole field that I just track. And then I would go to Notion AI and say, hey, can you actually create another, it would be called property. I just think of it as like a column. I need to track this as well. So as a default, I usually just have a notes section. And then if I find that I'm not using it, I just hide it. But I just kind of like that to have as a catch-all. So here we can click things are done. For status, we can see edit property. These are the values. So let's say, yeah, they're not, neither of them are started yet. These are when they're due. And so when we talk about the different views, this is what we're talking about, these two tabs here. So in this defaulted view, we're seeing all tasks. Now, let's say I change this to in progress. If I go to the by status view, you'll see that it's turned into more of a Kanban-ish type of format where it's bucketing the tasks by status. So if I had, let's say, 10 different tasks, it would bucket all of the tasks that are to do of those 10, all the ones that are in progress as cards. And then you could move things, right? So it allows you the flexibility of how you want to interact with the data. If you're a more visual person, if you want to see things by status, here's again how I use Notion. And so this little, I should have said this in the session, but Notion AI will usually live here in the corner. So I'm going to say, and you'll see this default to the page that you're on. That doesn't mean you can't ask it to do things to other pages, but it will default to assume that the thing you're asking it about is the page that you're on. You can always take that out and take that out. See, and it was, I think, defaulting to one of the tasks. To me, it doesn't really make a difference. I usually just don't touch it because it can always fix that itself, or we can start a new chat. So not a big deal, just want to note that. So let's see. So if I wanted other views, I can say, can you wire up another view by due date, showing everything that's due this week? So imagine a world in which I have maybe future tasks for next week, a bunch of tasks for this week. If I want to see just what's relevant for this week, you can see here that it added another view and it called it due this week. And so again, view you can just think of as a filtered view, like if you're familiar with Google Sheets. So this is simply just a filtered view showing tasks that are due this week. So for example, if I change this due date to next week, when I go back to due this week, you'll see that it's gone. And you can reorder this. So if it turns out that by status is how I always want to look at things as a default, I can move that up. If I tend to think more of deadlines and time bucketing, I can move that there. And so to me, this is what really removed the barrier to working with Notion more, is because I could not figure out necessarily like, what is this called? To me, it's a column, but I know Notion calls it something else. I just describe conversationally what I want. So I did the same thing with the CRM. As I mentioned, I said, these are the fields that I want. And then from there, I just edited. So let's finally close the loop on this. I'm going to go back to agents here. And this is the conversation we're having about the creations, the first chat we're having about it. And I'm going to say, I now have a tasks database. Can you connect it to this agent and incorporate it into the morning brief? All right, so 15 steps later, and you can always uncollapse to see all the steps that it took. So it says, yes, connected. I found your database and I granted this agent access to it. I updated the instructions so that it pulls overdue, etc. So let's go ahead and hit save and say, run the agent as if today is Friday, June 12. So I want to see if it flags those tasks as overdue. All right, so it says I ran the brief using Friday as today. So let's go ahead and open that. So let's pretend tomorrow morning we wake up. Let's pretend Slack is connected. It links us to this page. All right, here's my priorities. I have a workshop today. I need to close the loop on editing the recording. Task to focus on, edit the recording and send the recording. Conflicts and risks. Okay, great. So for me, if I were starting from scratch using this, I would probably want it to make this a little snappier. I would want to refine the output and the tone. That's something that we didn't really work on too much in the prompt. We just said brief and concise, but I think this could get much tighter because again, this is meant to be scannable, 5 minutes. What do I need to know today? What do I need to do today? I would want it to be more clear about overdue tasks, not just things to do. This is not just close the loop. To me, it doesn't imbue enough urgency. And again, an agent wouldn't necessarily know how it wants me to flag things. So this is all of the calibration and the refinement that I talked about. But it's still fairly easy in that it's simply having a conversation with the agent to say, again, just as you would with a new employee, an intern, a colleague, whatever you want to think of it. I'd love to make this a little bit tighter. Can you work on making the bullet points very brief, very concise? I want to be able to scan this in 2 minutes and be able to understand what is the most important thing today, and specifically not just things that are open loop, but things that are overdue. I'll stop after this because I don't want this to get too long, but just to show you, this is how I refine. I'm just very clear. I try to be very clear with what I want. The clearer I am, the clearer the agent's instructions would be. Again, same as when you're managing direct reports or working with a contractor or a consultant or any working relationship. When you're collaborating on something, you're having someone do something on your behalf, you need to be very clear about what you want. They're taking your direction. Ideally, they're reading your mind and they know exactly how you want and when you want it, but this is a brand new agent, it's a brand new workspace. It doesn't have any context. It doesn't know me. So I really need to be prescriptive about what I want. In the future, again, if this was a brand new workspace, I can say, let's say I was happy with this morning brief. I could then say, hey, I'd love for you to help me build a meeting brief agent. Review this other agent that I built, and I want you to match the tone and the format. So keeping it snappy and things like that. So it's much more specific now. 1-line bullets, less than 8 words per bullet. Add the tags, etc. So let's see if it actually updated it. Okay, great. Let's hit save. Save here. And then let's actually, okay, so this is the new version. Today, workshop prep, overdue, edit recording, today, check your inbox, right? This is so much more different, even with just that one change. This might be a little too short. I would probably want something in between, a little bit more context. But in some cases, this probably is enough. So again, it really just depends on the level of detail and granularity you want, and how you want the agent to give you this information. So that's building an agent. If you're watching this, I appreciate you giving me your time and attention again. My apologies that this didn't run smoothly during the session, but hopefully if you're watching this, it's because you genuinely are looking for a step-by-step walkthrough of how this looks, including all of the warts and all. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I love talking about this stuff, helping folks understand this, keeping it very practical and useful. So yeah, I hope you found the session helpful in some way, and I will talk to you soon.